I've been asked how I do the hinges on like a sailplane, the simple covering hinges. So I'm going to give you a quick overview, I guess, of how I do it. Uh, do some pictures here. So I've got my fin and rudder that's ready to cover. So what I'm going to do is cover the, I'll call it the non-beveled side. Here's the bevel in the rudder, in the fin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the other side, and then I'm going to use one piece on the hinge side. So I'm going to do some covering and then we'll continue the video. All right, here we are a little bit further along. So here's the rudder or the fin. I've got the one side covered, and this is what I do. I wrap around with the iron, get it decent right to the leading edge of the fin, and then I square off the post on the fin, and then I'll trim it, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Here's some of the final trimming on the fin. And I'm using a small cutting mat. And I initially used this, it's a piece of white from paneling, like a shelving material. So anyways, here's the fin just about done, ready to do the rudder next. So I got to seal and wrap over the edges, and now show you in a minute. All right, so here's the fin. So it's covered right to the top of this edge. And it's hard, you got to minimize your overlap when you're working with these light or transparent trims. So it takes some real time, and what I do is I hold the fin down against the board like this, or my cutting mat, and I use the X-Acto or a scalpel in this case, fold it over to the leading edge and cut the covering. So it's right at the leading edge of the piece. In this case, this is the fin. And this is Ultracote Park Light, by the way. So this is my Pareto. So we'll do the rudder next. All right, so here we are. We've got the rudder side covered, half covered. So it's covered right up to this line here, which is your angled or hinge side or movement side. And I've done the same trick with having it down on my board and trimming as close as I could get to the trailing edge, wrapped over for minimum overlap. And you'll find that that's not real easy to do, but after you do a few of these, it helps a lot with having it overlap where the color changes. All right, I'm getting ready to do the other side. So what I've done is just double up some masking tape, something you want to hold, so it'll hold the fin and the rudder in place. Just something to temporarily hold it. Because then what you're going to want to do is have just a slight gap on the actual rudder off the hinge line, and I'll show you once I get that set up. And at this point, what I've done is just kind of eyeball the gap. So there's the gap that'll give us enough range, I think, in motion. So again, use your tack rag. All right. I go right down the hinge line. And just kind of use the iron to cover the rudder. Doesn't have to be super tight or anything at this point. All you want to do is really have enough covering to hold it at the hinge joint. And that looks pretty good. So now we'll pull this off the tape. I can already see that this is good. I've got the full motion. And that's all I do with that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up with the iron, and then we'll review. The one thing that's critical when you're covering is don't be afraid to change blades. I use scalpel blades, number 11 scalpels, and they don't last real long when you're cutting against a mat or just cutting the covering. So whatever you use, X-Actos or scalpels, have a good supply on hand. So here you can see I've not finished heated yet and trimmed, but I've got the fin done. So we'll continue along. I'll let you see what we're doing here. So we're just going to cover this to try to meet the seam that we did on the other side. And once we get this all cut, heated up, then we'll do the final shrinking. If we need to adjust the hinge a little bit for throw, we can do that as well. Okay, that looks close enough to trim. Okay, that's not bad. So now we can go ahead and shrink all the leading and trailing edges, or at least iron them down, maybe not shrink. My Coverite trim iron, and I use a Coverite normal iron. The little trim iron here, I've got the heat all the way up. So other than just some final shrinking, there is our rudder hinge. I'm not going to do anything more than just that one piece of covering on the one side. So hopefully this video helped. If it didn't, if you've got questions, give me a shout. Okay, so here's the finished product. Here's the rudder and the fin hinged. Still need to tighten up a couple of wrinkles, but it's not bad. So that's it. That's how to cover with a piece of covering for your hinge.